I am going to be sharing how to make my grandmother's apple pie, except we are making it vegan. She taught me to make apple pie when I was a teenager, and so whenever I make it, I always think of her. So this recipe uses an oil-based crust, and I think that lends itself pretty well to being veganized. This pastry recipe is the recipe that my family uses in all their pies, so it's what I'm used to. To start, we have a bowl, and we're going to make one crust at a time because we need a top crust and a bottom crust. It's a half cup, so we need a cup of flour, a quarter cup of oil. I'm using olive oil. You can also use canola if you're worried about the olive oil flavor coming through. I don't think it really does, but if you're concerned about that, then just use canola. It works fine. So, quarter cup. This is my olive oil. Today, because it's a little thicker, I'm going to be using this creamer, just whatever creamer you have on hand, because the recipe was half and half. So try to use a non-dairy milk that's a little thicker if you can, but we've tried this with almond milk, which is not super thick, and we've used it with this before and it comes out just fine. So it's a little bit more forgiving than I thought it was. And I always use less salt than whatever the recipe calls for, so I would just add a little pinch. And then we're going to combine the wet and the dry. And you're welcome to mix with a utensil if you want, but I just use clean hands to mix it all together. Something like that. This looks a little bit dry. You can see the little dry spots. But if it's cracking too much, you can always add a little bit more oil, a little bit more cream. The crust is for sure the hardest part to get right. So, but I think this will work now. Second sheet of parchment paper goes on top. By now the oven should be preheating to 400 degrees. So I'm going to turn it on real quick. Roll it out as evenly as possible. You can see it's a little thicker here than it is over here. Then you just peel back the parchment paper. Just a little bit. If it rips, that's okay. You can fix it. And then kind of fun. One of my favorite parts. The second half off, and we're going to set this over here. And I like to make sure the pie pan is greased a little bit because I found this crust will stick if it's not. So I like to grease it. And then we just take our crust. To see. And just kind of put it over like that. And pull back on the parchment. Okay. And if it's doing that, that's okay. It's the bottom crust, so it's easy to fix. Okay, and you can see it's not totally even all the way around, but we will fix that. Going to cut the excess off, and then just add it where it needs more. Patch it up a little bit. It's the bottom crust. No one will be the wiser. And there we have our bottom crust. I'm going to set this aside. And at this point, I like to make my top crust and set it aside. So my top crust came out a little bit dry. And so don't worry if that happens. Sometimes it can still be saved. You just add a little bit more of the oil and a little bit more of your non-dairy. I'm doing exactly the same thing as I did before, but sometimes that's just how it goes. Dough tends to be a little bit temperamental. Now I got to cut up some apples for this pie, and there are things that I do the same with each pie, but basically each pie is different because I always use different apples, and that's what my grandma did, it's what my mom does. The only thing that is pretty consistent is Granny Smith apples. Usually always one Granny Smith in the pie, and we use different apples for different subtle flavors. The only apple that I probably would never use in a pie is Red Delicious. To those I say, you are beautiful, but you are empty. I don't like those for eating or pies. And I normally don't use more than two, but so I've got 2 Granny Smiths if I need them. Typically a pie will take about 6 or so. I've got 8, I think, here. Yes, 8, just in case. But at least one of these is going in there. And then I have 3 Golden Delicious, and 2 John Gold, and 1 Fuji. And all of these are grown in Washington State, so I think that's really cool. Yeah, gonna start peeling these and getting the spice mixture ready for my apples. Okay, so the spices for the filling, I like to get ready and set aside so the apples have less time to oxidize. 3/4 cups of sugar. And then we have a 1/4 cup of flour. This is very important. Do not forget to add this in because I've left it out before, and then your filling is just apples and apple juice, just watery. So very important to have that thickener in there. Oh, and I wanted to add that the crust being temperamental, it's not because we're veganizing the crust. It was always temperamental. That's just how that crust is. It's not more difficult because we're veganizing it. It's just always been difficult. And then a teaspoon of cinnamon. 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. And allspice just is one of those baking spices that smells like Christmas to me. 1/2 a teaspoon of nutmeg, and nutmeg is best when it's fresh grated, and that's just how we've always done it, so that's how I do it. And kind of wing it and just kind of eyeball it as far as the 1/2 teaspoon. Nutmeg smells so good. But yeah, it's definitely one of those spices that is better fresh. And we've always had fresh in my house, so that's what I use. And it takes a minute. Yeah, and then just knock it on the side when you think you're about there. And that's what it looks like when it's mixed up. So I just realized I used the wrong bowl. This is about the size of the bowl that I'm going to be using for the spices. And this is actually a pretty good measurement for the apples that I need in my pie. So when this is about full, then I will know that I have enough. So once you have an apple peeled, this is how I cut them up, because this is how my grandma taught me to cut them up. Cut them in half. And in half again. Cut out the core. And then cut them into smaller pieces, these little wedges. I'm gonna try as best we can to get them to be approximately the same thickness so that they bake evenly. And if you feel like this is too big, you can just cut them in half, make them a little smaller. Usually what I do So this is our bowl full of apples. There's 3 left. This is something that I only do when I have access to this tool, which is when I'm at my mom's. But we use this can that's been in our family a long time, and you mash up the apples into even smaller bites, just so that you can get more in there. So if you have something like this, I don't know, 100-year-old can. And then at this point we just add the spice mixture that we had set aside from earlier. And our pie, add the filling to the pie. And there, we'll see. We'll see how full it is. So here we have our pie. Bring over the top crust. Now we're done with this guy. Okay, and do just like we did before. Line it up and drop it over. Just like that. And then we get to pretend we're Snow White again. And try to leave a little bit. Make sure that it's to the edge. Make use of our tofu package opener. All of this is extra. You can do something with it. Make another pie or not. This is just our extra. So about like, and some pie plates kind of help you out with the spacing on this, I think, but to seal it up, go like this. And then we get to stab it for venting in the oven. So. And just to be on the safe side, I like to add a few more. Make sure there's room for the air to get out. Sometimes I like to add a pie bird. But that looks good. And then to top it off, you can add some cinnamon, and I'm gonna add a little bit of extra nutmeg too. Pie in the oven. And we have this nice little oven saver that first, and then you set the pie on top. And then it is 15 minutes at 400, and then we turn the oven down to 350 for 40 to 45 after that. There we go. Oh, look at that. Oh. So it is time to cut the pie. This is what it is supposed to look like. We gave it an extra 20 minutes in the oven to make sure that it was nice and gooey, which is what you want. Oh, because it's such a big pie, we also turned it up during the last 10 minutes to 375 instead of 350 to get kind of a more golden crust. Okay. Okay, and we'll see if this stuck at all. Kind of a mess, but that's normal. The first one is always kind of a little bit of a mess, and it did stick a little bit, but that was because I didn't cut it right. Still will taste delicious, but that is what it looks like, and that is what it's supposed to look like. The second one will look better, but I just wanted to show the inside of the pie. That's my grandma's apple pie recipe. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Pie.